Okay, class, this is the second video for this weekend. I had mentioned earlier in the week that I was going to go over the rest of the PowerPoints with the idea of what to review in time and in preparation for the AP test. Now, all of these things I'm going to go through, it'll probably end up taking 2 to 3 videos. The first one's going to be today, the second one will probably be Monday. But it's important that you keep up with these because come the end of next week, we will be having a test and we'll probably have pop quiz or two during the week on these different things. So being prepared for this is important. So items to review specifically for the AP test outside of the idea of what we're practicing within the AP review book. So this will help you to be able to answer those questions better because you will know what devices are and what styles are that we're looking for. Okay, so the first thing we're looking at here is this idea of rhetorical modes, which is what most of this video is going to focus on. The literary devices and the rhetorical terms you will find on these specific pages in your textbook. These are the glossary pages basically at the end of each chapter of the first 3 chapters of the book that when we covered back first quarter. These should be ingrained in your brain. And I hope they are at this point. Any vocabulary that we have done and covered this year, we're up through lesson 14 now. If you've watched the other video, you see that. And we're going to continue on because the more vocabulary that you know and understand, the better you will be prepared for the test. Literature-wise, there's going to be 4 different time periods and 4 different topics on the AP test. So I highly suggest reviewing different styles on in preparation for the test. So some ones that I suggested here specifically, so you see the complicated text, you see the controversialness of it, and you see the various time periods. I have suggested that you look at Letter from Birmingham Jail, the Martin Luther King Jr. piece, A Modest Proposal, and the Declaration of Independence. Now, each of these is drastically different. You got the satire, you have the letter of response argument aspect, and you also have the induction and deduction aspect with the Declaration of Independence. So knowing those aspects is important and it can help you in preparing for the types of documents they're going to have. Now, you are not probably going to see something we actually covered this year. Very rarely does one of the same documents show up. But knowing the different skills and having these skills that we've discussed up here and being able to apply them to different styles of literature is important. Important concepts, which will probably show up in the second or third video that we're going to go over, is this idea of transcendentalism, which always shows up, if not in my test, then on the AP US History test. Satire, humor, and sarcasm, as well as fitting in their irony. How to analyze a visual, because there will be a visual on the test, normally in the form of the synthesis essay, but it is there. And some major themes that we have covered this year with the idea of gender, community, education, and economy. Okay, so we're going to start first of all with the rhetorical modes. It's an idea of a strategy and a method that the author uses to present the subject through writing. So it's how they organized it, how they developed their ideas, what order they're put in, and there are 9 main ones that I'm going to cover right now. Each of these are covered in the next couple of slides, so you don't necessarily need to worry about writing down the names right now. But you can do it when we get to each one as we're going along. Many of these you've already heard about, and so hopefully this is just a review aspect of it. Okay, the first one is this idea of narration. So it's used to present events in the past. It tells a story, things from the present, sometimes from the future, but it's definitely this idea of telling a story. So it focuses on facts, and even if it's presenting historical background, it still includes the facts, but it does it in a way where it sounds kind of like a personal essay and it recreates the experience. This is where we have the anecdotes, this is where we have the firsthand evidence, and definitely fitting into that aspect. And it's very much illustrating or imagery, pictures within the head, and looking at the idea of what it's actually presenting. Description is used to create images of a place or an object and you're sketching the person as a character, or you're providing images that evoke and share a feeling. This is where we use our five senses. And so again, with the five senses that we did in the other video, it's important that when you're describing, you're being as detailed as possible. So when an author is using a lot of adjectives and being very descriptive using the five senses, it usually is with this idea of being able to use description. There is subjective versus objective. Subjective is the idea of you're focusing on the emotional impact, and objective is the idea that you're focusing on the physical details. So the physical details are very specific. You can't refute them. They are grounded in fact, they're grounded in being scientific, they're very technical. But if you have the emotional aspect, this is where the pathos comes in. Objective is where the logos comes in. Okay, classification and division get paired together. Classification is a way of grouping individual entities into identifiable categories based on their similarities. So all the rocks go over here, all of the jewels go over here, so you're classifying them differently. This is where we usually use science aspects. So we usually have this idea of biology systems, or we have this idea of psychology systems. But what types of disorders, what types of health things definitely fit into this idea of classification. And division is this idea of breaking it up. How do we break it up, and how do we get detailed about it? Okay, definition and illustration get paired hand in hand. When introducing a new term or fact, you have to make sure that you define it clearly for your reader. And it's the writer's responsibility to do this. So if it's something that they've potentially not heard about, it's your job to define it. So we have usually this idea of extended definition, where it's more than just a word or two. It's usually not the dictionary definition, but it's more the elaborate definition. It's more the, let me give you this whole idea and this example and this definition, so you really get it ingrained in there. Then the last one, we have this idea of illustration. It's almost like we're drawing this picture with the images and the detailed aspects of it, to where you can actually picture it in a more concrete and specific form. Okay, the next one we have is compare and contrast, which should be very simple for you on this idea of the similarities, the differences. You're giving, making sure that you're actually comparing, but you're also making sure that you're pointing out the differences, which is important. You have to make sure that you give both. There are two organizing principles that you can use. You can do subject by subject, where the idea that you discuss, so if we're talking about comparing and contrasting World War I and World War II, so you would do in one paragraph, you talk about World War I, and the next paragraph, you talk about World War II. But when you're talking about World War II, you actually reference back to World War I with this idea, but unlike World War I, World War II did this. So you are having that compare and contrast. Or you can do a point-by-point organization, where you have three specific things you're talking about, okay, saying that these are the similarities, and you're talking about them, and these are the differences, and you're talking about this. We're actually collating them and putting them together. Okay, the next one we have is process and analogy. Process is used when we need to provide readers with direction. So this is a recipe, this is an instruction manual, this is step-by-step steps that they're going through to do something. And it's usually in chronological order. Analogy compares topics that at first glance seem quite different. This is where we get our simile, where we get our metaphor, where it's taking unfamiliar material, or what we would usually call a lot of the times is technical information, and it's making it commonplace, and it's making it understandable. I do this a lot when we are doing vocabulary videos, so that you can get that idea of being able to make it more commonplace and have an idea of what to work with. The next one we have is cause and effect. This you've seen a lot with this year, with the idea of in social, or in AP US History, you have that idea of the causes and the effects happening. So this is the strategy that we need to trace the idea of what caused a particular event or situation, and then describe its effects on both. This is where a large logical fallacy comes in. Logical fallacies is part of this review video, part of the review sections. So it's important that you pay attention to these because there is this idea of them showing up on the AP test. So post hoc ergo propter hoc, it's after this, therefore because of this. So it's that idea of claims of causation. Just because this happened doesn't necessarily mean that it was based on this. So just because things happen in someone's presidency doesn't mean that it's necessarily responsible, that they're the ones especially responsible. It could be things that were put in place before them. Okay, so literary devices, these are the more specific ones. Again, I listed them on the pages, but making sure that you pay attention to the specific ones that I listed there, and paying attention to this. Again, we've already tested, we've already quizzed. This should be ingrained in you, but if none of these are, you need to make sure that you know them, because as we're getting deeper into the multiple choice review, you will definitely see these going on. Okay, the last thing I'm going to cover for today is the logical fallacies. These are the more common logical fallacies. These, I gave more definitions here, just like I did at the beginning of the year when we had had video, when we also did these in class. It is important that you pay attention to logical fallacies because as you're reading the literature that you're going to be getting on the test, you're going to notice things that are logically wrong with it, and they want you to pay attention to that. So these are the 10 more popular ones that we see, and making sure that you are familiar with these is important. Okay, I will finish this PowerPoint in the next session that we do. And it's only got 4 more slides, but I don't have time for those 4 slides now. So I will focus on those in the next aspect. So your homework is obviously you watch both videos, and in your AP review book, you need to read these 6 pages. And specifically, like I said, in the AP review book, it's specifically pertaining to the Tom Brokaw, sorry, essay that we started talking about on Thursday. So I want you to reread the topic. Then I want you to read some analysis that the readers give you. And then I want you to look at the rubric. So the rubric is on page 63, so very specifically. And it gives you how the AP readers actually break down the scoring on a scale of 1 to 9. And then you're going to read 3 sample essays. And while you're reading those 3 sample essays, I want you to actually act like you are an AP reader, and I want you to give that essay a grade. Would you give it a 1, a 2, a 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 9, and write that on the paper so that you have an idea, so that when we come back on Monday and we start to discuss this, you have an idea and a sense of how this goes. Then I want you on a separate piece of paper, which I'm going to collect, I want you to outline your own essay. If you were to write this essay, what would you write about? What topic would you use? What thesis would you use? What evidence applies here? You are not supposed to go and do research. This is not a research essay. This is off the top of your head. Where can you go? What can you do? And we gave some topic ideas in class on Thursday. If you want to use any of those, you can. If you want to use some of the same topics that were mentioned in the ones that you read on pages 65, 66, and 67, you can. But again, you need your own ideas. This is not you rewriting someone else's essay. This is you writing your essay. And then the final thing is Wordly Wise 14A and B, which I gave instructions for in the other video. I know it seems like a lot, but again, we're preparing and reviewing for the AP test, so getting used to this moving forward. Next week will also be part of grammar week, so being prepared for the grammar that's going to come out and reviewing, as well as some new concepts, is important. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday.